obviously, we have new news after a press conference late last week. Sandy Guardiola's family is filing $100 million wrongful death suit against the city of Canandaigua. The family held that press conference last week outlining issues within the investigative process and various conflicts within the facts of the case, or what they said are the facts of the case. State police handled the investigation, so the city says, hey, there was no bias here. The state handled this, whatever, keep us, they released a very, I'll say, it wasn't a defensive statement, but it was a very dismissive statement, or so it felt very dismissive, because it pretty much said, this is the state police's problem, basically. It's what they were saying. They said that because they didn't execute the investigation, there couldn't be any fault or any liability held by themselves or owned by themselves. The family also requested or raised questions about her employment, like where she was working, and suggested that there was some harassment taking place in her former office. She was a parole office. She was based out of Rochester and then relocated. Some questions about harassment there. They suggested that there might be another lawsuit filed on that part of it. Obviously, a lot to sort out there as far as the legal process goes. But I'm wondering what you're thinking now. Obviously, we're more than a year removed from the actual incident, the investigation, long been over, and now the family has made their next move. What is your feeling on it?
Yeah, I mean, timing-wise, that I don't feel like it's been too long. I mean, I think a 1-year anniversary does trigger additional attention to issues. But, I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that a woman was in her home sleeping and now she's dead. So I think any family member who could imagine a situation where a beloved member of your family who is at home sleeping ends up being shot to death might continue to wonder how that happened, want someone to be held accountable for it, want a sense of justice. So I don't find any actions that the family has taken to date to be out of line or unreasonable. I'm not sure what kind of relief or response or justice they should expect or will get, but I don't. It does surprise me anytime I hear an official statement that makes it sound like, well, I don't know, like, what more can we do? Well, I mean, we do need to keep acknowledging that someone was killed in their own home. And shouldn't we all be concerned with figuring out exactly how and why that happened? I mean, isn't that just kind of a fundamental protection of government, that we could be safe in our own house?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't find their action unusual at all, I guess, the families.
Yeah, I don't really think there's anything on that front that's unusual or different as far as that goes. It seems, the process seems pretty fair. Like you said, I agree. I don't think too much time has passed. That's kind of a odd thing to even, for folks to even be talking about. Right. The legal process is incredibly slow in this country anyway. It takes years to sort out virtually anything.
Yeah, anytime you lose somebody, like 1 year, if you ask people at the 1-year anniversary of a loved one's death, hey, hasn't it kind of been a long time? No, it hasn't been a long time. It's,
right.
Yeah.
And, I think one of the other parts of this that I've been thinking about is that, this isn't necessarily, it is, but it isn't an attempt to find out who was right and who was wrong. Obviously, the facts in this case seem to be completely jumbled.
Right.
And you have two completely different pathways to that day. You have the state police report, which was, one way, and then the family say something completely different happened because they conducted their own investigation. But I think some people are viewing this as a means to find out who was right and wrong. And I think that's always this is a civil case. That's not what this is. So this is, there is essentially a desire for a settlement because of the wrong that they feel was committed.
Yeah.
So it isn't going to necessarily be this situation where a traditional right-wrong outcome is found at the end. My guess would be that this is settled long before it actually goes to court. And it just sort of, it'll add to the skepticism that a lot of folks have with the system, and how the system sort of operates, and who it benefits, and how it functions. It raises a lot of questions there. And I talked about it on the radio last week with Ted Baker, because a lot of people now are saying, well, what happened? Well, this isn't the process to determine what really happened.
Right.
This is a civil process. And, where does that leave you, or where does that leave the community after this process is played out?
Right.
So a year from now, maybe this is settled. Where does that leave the community then?
Right.
I don't think there's a definitive answer on what really happened. I think you still have a split to some degree, whatever percentage split that is, where part of the community feels one way, or that it happened one way and believes one account, and the other believes the other.
Right.
And and I even think in terms of law enforcement, it puts them in a very difficult position, because they're in a no-win situation. The family obviously is in a no-win situation. They lost a family member. They are going to be dealing with that for the rest of their lives. And yet there probably won't be any hard policy or hard change that comes out as a result of this incident, or at least this part of the incident, which is the civil case that a lot of people are going to be focusing on now.
Right.
I mean, this will be in the headlines for months and months and months. But so we'll continue to cover it. Obviously, link down below if you're watching us on YouTube, link in the story on fingerlakes1.com to read all about it and sort of see where everything stands. We'll continue to update this story.